So we laid all the glass out on the fibrillated confetti Ouroboros, and we've cut it out and ground it around the edges, and we put most of it on the mold per se. I'm putting the last piece on. What is nice about this technique is when you've got your pattern there, you can always check it to be sure it fits before you put it on. And then you can apply the foil. Which takes a little bit of time for each and every piece. This is number 80. You can see all the patterns here that we've been using for the background. This allows for developing an organic design that develops as you go along. Just simply take your pattern off there. I always like to keep my tacky wax in a container at the top of the mold. Add a little bit of tacky wax in there, and there you go. The next phase, of course, will be soldering. So this morning we're starting on the soldering process on the lamp, and an important feature on this lamp is the painted fired dragons, which we have covered up with blue painter's tape to prevent any interaction between the solder and the flux and the painted surface. We have used for many years Richard's envelope wetters, and we've applied our own sponge to it. This is how we generally work. Of course, it's very important also to have proper ventilation. So you need to have your fans on to be sure things are going properly, so you don't have any problems with the ventilation issue. But what we do is we tin. We quickly tin. We're beginning the process of tinning everything. Later on, we'll go back over and apply the actual rounded bead. But this is how we get started on our lamps in terms of the soldering process. I'm now getting ready to do the bead process on the soldering, getting that nice rounded bead. There are many different ways of soldering. My partner, Preston, prefers to solder sitting down. I prefer to solder standing up. The key to getting a nice rounded bead on your shade is to be sure that you've got it on a level. And so we use a bunch of different ways to prop it up so that I've got a nice level here, and then I can actually build up my bead effectively. Another key element is that I always keep 2 soldering irons going at once, so I can switch between soldering irons. And this enables me to keep going with a nice hot iron at any given moment. So we remove the shade from the mold, and you can do that in a number of different ways. Down here in Florida, we're fortunate in the summer. We have a tin roof, part of it's somewhat flat, and we put newspaper down and set it on that for an hour, and then we can pull it right off. Many different ways of taking it off the mold, but we've got it off the mold, and the next task to do is to be sure you've got all of the tacky wax removed. And so it's important to scrape all the tacky wax off the back of the shade, and it generally comes slices right off, a little bit of scrubbing like that. So we get this off there, because you don't want to be breathing the waxy fumes while you're soldering. So this helps remove all of that. And then of course you have to start soldering the backside. So the entire backside of the shade has to be soldered, as well as the front side. And we want to, of course, turn on our fans. Fumes. And off we go, soldering the inside of the shade. And this doesn't have to be quite as beaded as the front. This is a structural element. And so we've soldered the inside as well as the outside of the main part of the shade, and now we're working on finishing up the lower border. And this lower border will curve back in. One of the fortunate things is we've been able to photograph some lamps we did in the 70s and 80s, because they've been structurally very sound, and collectors have continued to collect our work. This adds a structural element of stability for the shade. It's been a long day working on finishing up the bottom border, and I got that attached to the shade, and then I scrubbed it up and applied the patina. So now we're ready for the grand unveiling, and here we go. This is the finished product.